You were one of the leading promoters of the Amexit,
Yes.
and you co-sponsored a bill to get us out of the United Nations. I'm curious, why do you think we ought to leave the United Nations, and what exactly would that entail?
Yeah, the day after Brexit, on Facebook, I revived this bill that I'm a co-sponsor of to get us out of the United Nations, and I used the hashtag Amexit and UNexit. And both of those, and that post caught on pretty well, and it renewed interest in a bill that actually was introduced by Ron Paul many years ago, and a congressman before that. And the reason that I think we need to get out of the UN is, well, it's full of dictators, and it's also something that I don't think our sovereign government should defer to. For instance, a lot of these foreign relations bills that come in front of us in Congress and the whereas clauses, they might say, whereas the UN has said this or the UN decided this, now therefore be it resolved. Well, that's almost an automatic no for me, because why would I defer to the United Nations if we're a sovereign country? The best thing you can say about the United Nations is it's mostly ineffective and a waste of money. Like, that's the best thing you could say about it. So I'm glad that they're somewhat ineffective, but I don't like that we waste the money. We provide like 90% of the funding for the United Nations for their activities overseas, their intervention and whatnot. And so, you know, the other countries who are in there, they don't pay their fair share, but a fair share would be zero, and we should get out.
Amen. So Trump has been kind of getting us out of some of these UN organizations. He announced we're leaving UNESCO. He said we're going to withdraw from the Paris Agreement. Most recently, the UN Compact on Migration, the UN Human Rights Council. What's the kind of sentiment in Congress? Are people in Congress okay with that, or is this kind of hesitant about what Trump is doing?
Of course, the deep state doesn't like that. They would like to see us fully involved in the United Nations and intervening in every country possible. One of the organizations that's actually worse than the United Nations is the World Trade Organization, because unlike the United Nations, which is mostly ineffective, the World Trade Organization has been effective at dictating the terms of our trade. And that's why Trump's push toward bilateral agreements over multilateral agreements is also good. You know, if you have a bilateral agreement, a trade agreement, and there's a dispute with the country that you're trading with, then you settle it. Two sovereign nations settle it. When you have a multilateral agreement, that requires a higher form of government, if you will, that other sovereign countries must defer to, and that's where the World Trade Organization comes into effect. And so, for instance, there are bills that are foisted upon us in Congress, and we're told, well, the World Trade Organization ruled, and you're going to have to vote for this bill. And a lot of my colleagues dutifully vote for that bill to keep us out of trouble with the World Trade Organization. I think that's a problem, and that's another area where, at least when he was campaigning, President Trump pushed back against, and to some degree still is, even though he's surrounded by the swamp, and they like those sort of arrangements.